There is a story that is so disgusting, so vile, that I've been dying to tell it on this channel. Yet, the few times in the past that I've gone searching for it, I wasn't able to find it. It had gotten to the point where I thought that perhaps I just imagined it. Maybe it was some kind of Mandela effect type thing where somehow I had combined my memory of one of Kenny's deaths from South Park with the Swampsadegaba story. But recently, while looking for something completely unrelated, I came across it again. It was real. Another Reddit medical horror story. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's talk about the woman who didn't know that she had a half-melted dead baby inside of her. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. A lot of the times, the movies we want to watch are locked to certain regions. For example, recently I was in the mood to watch Planet Terror again. So I go to Netflix, and it's not available right now, but you know where it is available? Canada. With NordVPN's 5,400 plus servers in 59 countries, you have no borders. With just a click, you can look like you're anywhere in the world and consume region-locked media to your heart's content. So I go to NordVPN, I change my location to Canada, and oh, would you look at that? Play now. And you can do this on multiple devices. One account allows you to connect up to 6 different devices, in any combination. Right now, NordVPN is giving a huge discount on the 2-year plan, plus 4 additional free months. Just go to nordvpn.com/wang. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/wang or click the link in the description below. The story I'm about to tell is one that's occasionally uttered among the pantheon of great disgusting Reddit horror stories, but sometimes it falls through the cracks. It's maybe not held in quite the same esteem as the Swampsadegaba story, the Cumbox, the Jolly Rancher story. But truly, this is one of the most vile stories to ever come from that website. Like, despite me not having a uterus, I still feel a little rumbly in my tumbly reading this. It begins with a post by M. Munir M. on April 14th, 2014. What was your worst I'm so fucked moment? Note that some of the stuff is deleted at this point, and the oldest archived version is Dutch for some reason, in case you're wondering what a ALegitDoctor is. So of course there's a lot of simple classic stories in this. You got a guy who shit too big and overfilled the toilet at his friend's house. Many such cases should have brought his poop scissors. You got a guy who texted his boss, "Can you come here for sex?" instead of, "Can you come here for a sec?" Luckily for him, she laughed it off, but you have to wonder if there is a little unless. Of course, there's some more serious ones mixed in, like someone who capsized their boat.
Oh no! Oh no!
And a man whose 60-year-old mother saved their lives steering their SUV after spinning 360 degrees on black ice. But the legendary post that's contained within this thread is actually buried a bit further down in the comments. A reply to one of the more seemingly innocuous responses. After I worked so hard for 2 years to get into nursing school, I came home after my first day at the hospital and realized how much I hated nursing. My wife is a PCT at a big hospital. Nursing students come in all the time to follow her and the RN. A lot have noped the fuck out of there after a few hours. The real life shit that can't be taught in school, poop, puke, blood, chaos, and old guys sexually assaulting everyone, etc., hits them like a ton of bricks. Why has no one ever thought of making first years visit the ER for a week or two? And then, the person responsible for the next infamous story in Reddit's archive of pure filth would arrive. FatMama923. Note that despite the fact that her name was strangely fitting for this story, this was just a coincidence. This wasn't a gimmick account or a throwaway account, she just happened to name herself that because she had recently had a child when she made her account. So Fat Mama responds, "That's actually why I dropped out of nursing school. My professor in my first class made us do 5 hours of hospital grunt work for part of class credit. I was done. I didn't even make the first hour. I went the next day and dropped that class, and changed my major the next semester. I'm very thankful to him." So you gotta wonder, what could she have possibly seen in that single hour that made her drop everything. Just tossed out everything she had worked for thus far. The years spent in school, the tuition fees, the long, tedious nights of studying, all abandoned because of whatever horror it was that she had gazed upon. You can't come here, say that, and just not tell us. And so she told us, warning, do not read if you are eating, have heart problems, are easily disgusted, or are otherwise unable to handle disgusting things. This, of course, was a warning to Reddit, but take this also as a warning to you. And I'll add that if you have any kind of trauma specifically pertaining to pregnancy or anything like that, you're probably going to want to skip this one too. But if you're subscribed to me, I'm assuming you know what you signed up for. And if you're not subscribed to me, well, I'm getting kind of close to 1 million subscribers, so you know. Anyway, without further ado, here's the story of why Fat Mama quit nursing school after a mere hour on the field. Super morbidly obese patient was brought in complaining of severe abdominal and vaginal pain and high fever. Doctor began palpating her abdomen and felt a mass in the lower right quadrant. She was too massive to fit in the ultrasound rooms, so they had to do everything there in the ER. The tech tried to do a regular ultrasound, but it wouldn't penetrate the 700 pounds, literally, of fat. So she decided she would have to do a transvaginal ultrasound. I have to say, transvaginal ultrasound sounds like a pretty awesome name for a prog rock band. Although maybe I'm just thinking of transatlantic. The doctor and about 30 nurses lift this tub of lard onto a table and somehow get her into stirrups. This was disgusting enough. Did I mention she was a landed whale? Judging by the name Fat Mama, I'm assuming this is a big woman herself, so, you know, it was basically just friendly fire. The tech started moving the folds of her thighs and her panniculus out of the way. And if you don't know what a panniculus is, I found this very scientific diagram to explain it to you. One nursing student on each side to hold thigh flaps and one to hold stomach flap. I was the unlucky fucker charged with handing her tools. The doctor had left the room, of course. He told us to just holler when we figured out WTF was going on. So we're yanking on this woman's fat rolls and finally managed to start getting her vagina exposed. Oh my god. The smell. This is the most horrifying thing I've ever been exposed to before or since. Now, I worked for a flower shop growing up. I've been to funeral homes. I've seen bodies in all states of decay. I've hunted, I've fished, my grandparents owned cattle, poultry, and pigs. I've rubbed deer urine all over my face. I would roll in cow shit before I went through this again. And now some of you are probably wondering, why did she rub deer urine all over her face?
That's disgusting.
Some of you probably know why, but she explains that this is a trick in deer hunting. It masks the smell of humans and attracts bucks. Anyway, she continues. Her inner thighs and the opening of her vagina were weeping this blackish brown, thick fluid. My classmates on either side of her promptly started gagging into their masks. The tech started screaming for me to run out and get the peppermint oil. I dove across the theater for the bottle, ran back, and drenched all our masks in the oil. Once we could all breathe again, the tech told me to run for the doctor, that this was an emergency. So they're a little more fortunate than the team in the Swamps of Dagobah store, who you'll remember had their entire supply of peppermint oil depleted. But what these people find, my opinion, is much worse. Okay, I still have no idea what's going on. I can't see past the mountains of fat and the tech, but I do as I'm told. When I finally returned with the doctor, my fellow nursing students were all huddled in the corner with the tech, who looked like she had aged 20 years in the 10 minutes it took me to come back with the doctor. The doctor walked over and started asking the tech what the hell was going on. Keep in mind, this fat tub of lard is still in the background screeching about how she wants to get down and she's hungry and when are we letting her go home. Somehow, somewhere, this woman had found a man desperate enough to fuck her. The mass in her abdomen was the remnants of a placenta. Her body had started rejecting the pregnancy. But because she was so overweight, she never knew she was pregnant and never realized she was miscarrying. The baby had begun rotting inside her vaginal cavity, and the placenta was just floating detached in her uterus. They had to take her in for emergency surgery, scrape the remnants of the baby and the placenta out of her body, and put her on IV antibiotics. I know she spent at least a week in the hospital. Past that, I don't want to know and pray I never find out. So that's my horror story of why I wimped out of nursing school in one day. TLDR, super fat lady has a baby die in vagina, smell makes everyone in the theater want to die, and makes me reevaluate my entire life. There's a lot to unpack here. Of course, as I said before, for a period of time I remembered the story and thought maybe I was confusing it with something that happened in an episode of South Park. That of course being Season 4, Episode 15, Fat Camp, in which Kenny becomes a famous daredevil, one stunt being spending 6 hours inside Mrs. Crabtree's uterus. Kenny of course does not survive this stunt, nor does a second boy who nobody knew was in there. Next thing to consider, of course, as I always say in these stories, anyone can come on Reddit and just say anything. As others in the thread pointed out, you'd be hard-pressed to find a lifelong medical practitioner with a story this putrid. Yet she happened to experience such an unusual story within 1 mere hour in the field. It's like winning the lottery, except instead of $1 million, you get a half-melted dead baby, all looking like something out of street trash, sitting in the uterus chugging Tenafly Viper. And of course, I know that I have a lot of women who watch this channel, and I have a gut feeling that my viewers fuck. So after having witnessed this video, I imagine that there's a non-zero chance that there's a few of you panicking right now that you've just got a fucking dead baby rumbling around inside of you like the marble inside a can of spray paint. So there's a few factors to consider, and of course, I'm not a doctor, I'm just the guy with Google. First thing to consider, how likely is it to get pregnant without knowing it? There's a phenomenon known as cryptic pregnancy. And this does happen sometimes, often with a healthy child being born into a toilet. Like, can you imagine going to the bathroom one day and instead of a fucking turd, you got 18 plus years of responsibility? It's actually more common than you might think, with some data suggesting that as many as 1 in 475 pregnancies are cryptic pregnancies. And although obese women like the one in this story are more likely of experiencing it, it can happen to people of any weight. As demonstrated by one such story highlighted by The Guardian in 2019. Here's a picture of Clara Dolan, 7.5 months pregnant without realizing it. Not what any reasonable person would call obese, nor assume that they're pregnant. It's not just the size thing, it's all the other symptoms that go along with pregnancy that either are not experienced or they're not recognized as pregnancy symptoms. For example, the story of Melissa Surgikoff, who was highlighted by USA Today. She was used to having an irregular menstrual cycle, so not having a period didn't really set off any alarms. And when the time comes for her to have her baby that she didn't know she was about to have, she thinks it's, oh, I gotta pass a kidney stone. And then boom, that's a big fucking kidney stone, you better give it a name, I guess. On top of all that now, you have to consider your odds of miscarrying without knowing it. Also a larger amount than I expected. Apparently missed miscarriages are 1 to 5% of all pregnancies. Normally when this happens, the leftover parts excuse themselves naturally. But in rare instances, like this story, medical intervention is required. Now I feel like you're waiting for me to do some kind of calculations here and, you know, figure out exactly what your odds are, but I'm not really the math type of Asian, but I'll try.
Come on, do math.
It's probably going to be wrong, but I think this is how it works. So your odds of getting pregnant from a single sexual encounter, let's assume unprotected, we like to have a good time, 1 in 20, 5%. You multiply that by the odds of having a cryptic pregnancy, 0.21%, and then you have a 0.0105% chance of having sex one time and not knowing you're pregnant. You multiply that by a 5% chance of having a miscarriage without knowing about it, and you've got a 0.000525% chance of having a melted dead baby inside you right now as you watch this video. Basically what I'm saying is, if you've ever had sex, your vagina is haunted. Anyway, that's all for now. If you like this video, check out my video about the Chinese guy who ate a dead baby. I'm out.